Hello and welcome to Really Cool People, a podcast produced by Schweitzer Church. I'm your host, Jason Lanier. This is a place to hear stories of really cool people. And the hope is that as we hear these stories, you and I will be inspired, encouraged, and challenged through moments of serendipity. C.S. Lewis, in a sermon entitled The Weight of Glory, said, "There are no ordinary people. You and I have never talked to a mere mortal." So it's my joy over the next few minutes to introduce you to somebody who may seem, especially themselves, rather ordinary, and yet they are a really cool person. Today, we're going to meet Roger Lewellen. Roger is an electrical contractor. He's a dad. He's a husband, a guy who plays the bass, and he loves to take pictures of eagles. He's got some really great stories. He's got a great laugh. So wherever you're at, settle in and enjoy this conversation with Roger Lewellen. Today, we are happy to welcome Roger Lewellen into the podcast studio. So, Roger, let's start with your story. You can start wherever you want to start.
Well, I'll just say I'm 69 years old. I have an electrical contracting business. I've been married 38 years and have 4 children, and God has been good. So, other than that, life is good.
Well, that is a fantastic summary at the end of where you're at right now.
That's it.
Yeah. But let's think about your early days. Where was Roger Lewellen born?
I was born in a small town called Humansville, Missouri.
Okay.
And which is about 45 miles north of Springfield. And then I was raised in Bolivar, Missouri, which is just 30 miles north of Springfield, and I moved to Springfield in 1979. So I've been in the Springfield area ever since. Battlefield and Republic and Billings, but mainly Springfield area. So,
what was it like to grow up in Bolivar?
It was your typical small town. No. Just, you could do what you wanted to do. There was, if you knew of any crime, you didn't know. I mean, you never heard about it, or, you were safe to ride your bicycle wherever you wanted to go and do whatever you wanted to do and just be home when it got dark. So other than that, it was pretty laid back.
Do you have siblings?
I did have 3 sisters. They were all older than me, and 2 of them were gone when I came along, and so when I was about 15, I became an uncle, or actually I was an uncle just a few weeks after I was born, and a great uncle at 15. So
oh my goodness,
it was pretty crazy.
Yeah,
but anyway, they were all older than me, so I really didn't have anybody at home, as far as sisters or brothers or anything.
So these nieces and nephews, were they almost like your cousins?
Yeah, pretty much. We all grew up together and, of course, played together and everything because they all lived in the same area. But that was about it, I guess.
What when you played together, what was some of the fun stuff that you had playing together?
They were all girls, so, we had to do the Barbie doll thing and all that good stuff. So I had girls in my whole life until about 15 years ago when I had my son Jude, and then that was the first guy in the house my whole life. So I lived my first 54 years with all women.
Oh my goodness.
And that was a mistake my mom warned me about, because when I was 16, I told her I was going to pray for a house full of women. And she said, "You better watch how you pray." And as I got older, I realized what she meant. It kind of backfired from my idea.
Where was your dad?
My dad had a mechanic garage in our backyard, and he just worked for himself. And then when I got about I was about a sophomore in high school. They started a Votech there in Bolivar, and he became the mechanics teacher at Votech when I was in high school, which was horrible. You know,
It was horrible.
for a high school kid.
Yeah.
Your dad's a teacher and you're in high school. That just doesn't work, you know. But we both rode motorcycles, my dad and I. And he had an airplane, flew, and so we always got along good. You know, he would fly and I would drag race up and down the runway on the motorcycle. So we always had a good time.
What was your earliest memory on a motorcycle?
Oh, like I said, we had a garage in our backyard, so we had a street that was pretty much car free and a block long. So as long as I can remember, from 10 years old on, I ran up and down that block as fast as I could on a motorcycle, and U-turn and come back, and he let me, you know. So probably about 10 years old is when I started riding.
Did you wear out a bunch of tires?
Did wear out a bunch of tires. He'd get upset about that, but we had a good time. The only time I crashed one was at the airport, and he was flying, and I got it back up before he came and landed. So I just limped in pain and never told him anything.
Oh my goodness! Did you said he flew? So did you ever take up flying?
You know, I didn't. I went with him all the time, and I regret that. You know, I guess, you know, I don't know how many kids, but I thought I don't want to do anything my dad does, you know, but because I didn't want to be a mechanic and I didn't want to fly. And then now that once I got older and away from home, I regretted those decisions, you know.
Yeah.
Because I love airplanes and luckily we both rode motorcycles, so we had that in common, you know.
What was one of the interesting questions that I will ask people is like, what was her life like in fourth grade?
The biggest thing I remember in the fourth grade, because, you know, back when I was in school, I don't know how it is now, but, you know, the President of the United States was a major thing, you know, and JFK got assassinated when I was in the fourth grade, and that was pretty traumatizing to a fourth grade class, you know, because they brought a TV in, you know.
Yeah.
And it definitely stayed in your mind, you know, because that was a huge deal.
Mm-hmm.
You know, today I don't know if it would be, because it doesn't seem like political stuff is quite as, you know, as deep as it was back then, you know. I mean,
well, it's still pretty deep today. Yeah. I mean,
but it was a huge, you know, that was just a huge deal that happened for all of us kids, but I never forgot.
Yeah, I'm sure. That's incredible. So it's kind of makes sense, because if your dad had a garage and had bikes and rode a motorcycle, then that you would too. What other kind of hobbies or habits did you pick up growing up that you've kind of carried with you?
Oh, since I was into motorcycles, once I got out of high school, I started building custom motorcycles and then got into some Corvettes for a while and got eat up in that pretty good for a few years and of course the motorcycle thing never left me really. It's in your blood. I mean, I'm approaching 70 and still have one, you know. So you know, my son doesn't want me to ride, my wife doesn't want me to ride, so and then the whole time I ride now, with all the texting and everything, I just walk a little closer to Jesus and pray the whole time I'm riding, you know. But I did anyway. Back to building custom motorcycles. A friend of mine, Mark Stevens, his dad had Stevens Studio, which is a photography place in Bolivar, and I graduated with Mark, and I hit him up about taking some pictures of my custom motorcycle, and he said, well, I'm getting ready to go to Springfield. Back then it was called Lawrence Photo. And he said, why don't you go with me and I'll show you a camera to buy and you can just do it yourself, you know. And I thought, well, that might be cool. And so anyway, to make a long story short, that got me into photography, and it's probably one of my main hobbies to this day, because I got into eagles because Harley Davidson is an eagle symbol, you know, on our country's an eagle symbol, and so once they started finally showing up in Missouri, because when I was growing up, you didn't see any because they were basically extinct, you know.
Right.
And so once I saw the first one, man, I was hooked on tracking them down. So it's probably a pretty major hobby in my life now, is taking eagle pictures.
I've heard you talk about what a day with you taking eagle pictures is like. Can you describe that, and who likes to go with you and who doesn't?
Well, nobody in my family will go because there's a good chance, you know, I'll leave before it gets daylight and come home after the daylight's gone, so they don't see any fun in 12 hours of maybe standing in one spot waiting for something to happen, you know.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of patience in it, you know, to try to get the shot, that one shot, you know.
What do you do in those 12 hours? What do you do in that waiting time? What's that like?
Man, well, you know, I have an electrical business, and I'm never alone, so it's a kind of a good place to clear your mind and look around and be thankful, you know, for what God has made and what He's given you and stuff like that. So you can do a lot of thinking, you know, and breathe some fresh air and soak in some vitamin D and stuff like that. So it's kind of a, you know, good for me all the way around.
Yeah, I can understand that. I hear that. It's amazing what being outside does for my own spirit.
Yeah.
And what the sunshine does and what that sense of just waiting and peacefulness does.
Yeah, it's huge. It definitely makes you feel better.
It does.
For sure.
You mentioned there again that you've got an electrical business. How'd you get into the electrical business?
Well, when I graduated from high school, I got a job at the Assembly of God headquarters in the maintenance department. And at that time, the sixth floor of that place was empty, and they decided to make it a graduate school. So they had a master electrician in-house that worked in the maintenance department, so the city said they would allow him to use his master's license to do the electrical work if they would get a union journeyman electrician from a company. So they did, and he was working by himself for about a week and said he needed an apprentice, and I was the new guy on the block, and they sent me up there, and then, of course, he was a union electrician, and we were talking at break 2 or 3 days in, and he showed me some of his check stubs, you know, and I thought, man, that's what I want to be, because I had no idea at the time. And anyway, I started there, and we finished that graduate school, and then I eventually got in the union myself, and that's where it all began.
How long did it take from that first entry point to the point where you got in the union and you got your journeyman's card? And then
it took me 7 years to get into the union. It was back then. It was, if you weren't family almost, you didn't get in. It was pretty locked up back in the day, and so I went to work for a non-union company during those 7 years. And anyway, I finally got on a job at MSU, which was SMS back then. But anyway, I was the foreman on it, and the business agent from the union came in and asked me if I wanted to be a union electrician. And I said, sure. And he said, what would it take to get you to come over? And I said, an A ticket like I've been there forever. And I just figured that it was over. And, man, about a week later, he brought one in, and I started, when they started Cox South, it was my first union job I was on. And then I stayed in the union until 1992, and then I decided I'd go in business for myself. And so I've done that ever since 1992. So, I always told myself then I don't want to be 65 and say, boy, I wished I would have tried my own business. And then once I hit 65, I said, boy, I wished I'd have never tried my own business. Because all my union buddies are retired, But anyway, no, it's been good, but you always think about stuff,
Well, why did you have that sense when you turned 65 that you wished you wouldn't have started it? Is it because you don't have an exit plan or a way out, or?
Oh, I've always worked my whole life. I started throwing newspapers when I was 7 years old, morning and night. And back then they had morning paper and evening paper, and then I worked at a truck stop all through high school. So retirement, I've just always worked. So if I'm idle time drives me crazy. So, my next birthday I'll be 70, and I told my wife, I said, if I feel safe on a ladder, I guess I'll still work because I get bored too easy,
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not the neighborhood guy that's going to walk his dog and sit on the porch, shoot. But having a son late in life, he's 15, and it doesn't make me seem that I'm as old as I am.
Sure.
Because I got him, hanging around. So anyhow, one of these days I'll have to give it up, but I still enjoy it.
So let's talk about your family a little bit. The family that you've raised and the family that you've forged in adulthood. You said you've been married to your wife for 38 years. How'd you guys meet?
Well, she was 19 and I was 31. And she was in a Christian rock band. And believe it or not, when I got out of high school, I played bass guitar for a quartet for a couple of years that traveled all over the United States, which, nobody ever knows I was a Southern Gospel Quartet guy, But anyway, one of the guys that was in that quartet happened to be one of the guys in this Christian rock band. And we hadn't seen each other probably 10 years or so, I imagine. And they needed a bass player, and he called me up one day. He said, we need a bass player. Would you come out and play with us and see what you think? And I thought, I don't know. He said, yeah, just try it. It's a Christian rock band, And I said, okay. So anyway, we went. And of course, I met Lisa that night. And 3 months later, we were married. And so I guess the little Christian rock band worked out pretty good.
I guess so.
Shoot.
What? How do you go from just meeting her to married in 3 months? What was the spark that hit?
The biggest thing probably is she was Christian, and I had 10 years prior I had went through a divorce, and the church I was into back then, the pastor said, there was no grace back then in the denomination I was in, and he said, I was 21 years old, and he said, you're basically
You're lost?
You're lost, headed to hell since you've gotten the divorce. So I'm 21 years old, love motorcycles, and quit the gospel quartet and started riding with the gangs, and totally, I thought, well, if I'm going there, I might as well enjoy the ride, I mean, that's how I took it.
Yeah.
Because it pretty much, I was raised where, I mean, if you had fun, it was wrong. So I was under that my whole life. So I thought, you know what, if I'm doomed, I'm going to have some fun.
Uh-huh.
So anyway, did a lot of things I regret, a lot of things I definitely don't want to talk about. But anyway, I was about a month before the little Christian rock band came along with my wife. I was at a bar, and they played "I'll Fly Away," and boy, I bawled like a baby,
Really?
So I realized that I'm not 100% gone, but it kind of stayed back in my mind. I thought, I've done too much in 10 years to ever go back, so I just. Since they sung that there, I just never went back to that bar, So I didn't want to be under conviction again, So anyway, like about a month later, then this phone call comes, with the Christian rock band thing. And I thought about that "I'll Fly Away" song, and I thought, yeah, I'll give it a shot, But anyway, it was a God thing, It's probably how we, she was coming out, 19, teenager, super rebellious. I was a jerk, hated everything, and so we kind of just, we were kind of each other's helper, which was really bizarre because of our age difference and everything.
Right.
So it was we've always felt to this day that it was the God thing because we were both into music and to make a long story short, we played in praise teams for probably 25 years. And then kind of when we had our son, we drug our girls through all that and stayed super busy. And we thought, we're not going to do that to him. So we stepped down and just spent our time with him, And then we're just now gradually getting back into it part-time,
Mm-hmm.
So it was a pretty crazy deal, but both of us have thanked God because she was headed down the wrong path and I came from the wrong path, and so it kind of brought us both together
That's an amazing story.
It was pretty crazy. It was pretty crazy. We've never forgot it, that's for sure. Because it's just super, super odd how, like I said, the age difference, her dad, he was a ex-Marine. Yeah, and I mean, he hated me. Trust me. He said he's probably been married and got kids and over 30 years old. And Lisa said, yeah, all three, Dad. So, I mean, when I met him and stuck my hand out to shake his hand, he just shut the door. And I understood. I was old enough by then to understand because he hadn't had any. He had 3 daughters, and none of them had ever left home before. So,
did he come around?
It took, it probably took. Now he came around Lisa pretty quick, because like I said, we got married in 3 months, and when we got married, I just went in and told him that, I said I'm not bringing her home tonight because we're going to get married, and
where'd you get married?
We just found a church that would open up the doors, and it was some little church over here off Mount Vernon and Bypass. I forget the name of it now. It's a little octagon church over there, and it was just kind of spur of the moment deal,
They opened up the doors?
Yeah. It was pretty crazy. She called around and found somebody that would do it, and I said, let's just do it then.
Do you have anybody there for your?
Yeah. We had a couple of friends of ours that, you had to have 2 witnesses, so we had a huge wedding. There was 5 of us there, the preacher and me and her and our 2 friends. And it was his first daughter to get married off. So it was But like I said, I was just such a major jerk at that age, going through that 10 years of what I went through. If I regret a lot of things for her, I didn't care about me, but, it was a huge deal to her because she didn't have a wedding, it was just.
So how's that played out over the course of your life? Like, have you done different things on your anniversaries, or you've?
Well, we've thought about 1,000 times to renew our vows and do a real thing, and just never have made that commitment. And now, like I said, I'm getting ready to turn 70, so I don't know if it'll ever happen now or not. But I did, feel bad for her for that, and she's felt bad. But under the circumstances, it would have never happened if we hadn't done it the way we done it. So it's everything was definitely different than the norm.
How many kids have you had then together?
We've got 3, 2 girls and a boy, and I had one daughter from a previous marriage. But anyhow, that's, like I said, we've been married 38 years now.
So what are some of the things you've learned in those 38 years of being married and raising your kids?
Probably the biggest thing is it's definitely not all about me. And that's, when you're set in your ways, that's a hard thing to change, But I've definitely softened up over time, big time, which is good, So, or my son, having him late in life, he doesn't realize how lucky he is. I've had to apologize to my daughters because I hadn't fulfilled that softness all the way in. I know when they were in high school trying to date and everything, I was pretty bad. None of the guys ever came back twice. I'll put it that way.
What were you like?
Oh my gosh! I'd always meet them in the driveway, and say something rude and crude, and then they would leave and never come back. And then Lisa would, try to preach at me and tell me that's not how this should be, But anyway, everything's good now, and they survived, and I'm glad.
There is a lot of laughter in your life. You tell stories with a lot of laughter around you. How'd you come to that place where you laugh a lot like that?
Well, I don't laugh a lot. I mean, there's not any comedy that makes me laugh, which, my wife and kids, they watch all kinds of comedy shows, and I don't, because it's none of it's ever funny to me, and they can't figure out why. So I do love my family, and I love, who Jesus is and what he's done, but I just don't like the game that I've seen played in my life and so many other lives, So, there's not a lot of things funny to me, like a comedy show or things like that, I'm more serious. And so they've all preached at me, how come you don't just laugh,
You've laughed a lot in this time together.
I laugh more about, the things I've gone through probably more than anything else. But I'm not a TV guy much really anyway.
Do you read?
Do what?
Do you read?
Not a lot. I like I say, I have my own business, so every night I've got stuff to do from it, and then to unload, I definitely like the wind in my face, if I had a choice, I would probably ride somewhat every night, because it just kind of takes the breath away, I guess. I don't know.
Have you ever gone on a big long ride?
It's been years ago. Years ago, we rode to South Dakota to Sturgis, which was a big deal. This was probably when it was only been going on for about 5 years, and it's been going on a long time now. But that was the only time I've done a lot of short trips like to Wichita, Kansas, or something to the drag races, or Topeka, to the drag races or something like that. But not anymore since I've gotten older. I like to ride by myself and just go where I want to go, and not have to hear anybody. Let's go here, let's go there. I like my time when I get it, because I don't get it very often.
About how many hours do you put into your business a week?
As far as physical labor, I just do 40 hours a week, and then I do, whether it's material lists for the next day, or invoicing, or bidding a job, or whatever, when I get home. But it's probably, I'm maybe 50 hours a week for everything. I don't do a whole lot.
Have you one of the phrases that's come up in the past several years is trying to find a work-life balance. Have you thought about that much, or have you?
Yeah, because when I was young, for the first 20 years of our married life, I worked 7 days a week. I just thought I had that. It's the work's there. I got to do it. I can't let anybody down. And it took me 20 years to realize something my dad tried to tell me from day one. He said, if tomorrow don't come, it doesn't matter. And once I got that mindset of that, I don't need to work Saturday and Sunday, because nobody cares except it was just eating on me, and nobody else cared that I did that. So once I realized that, okay, my family is more important than providing for my family in a sense, I thought, man, I got to do this to provide for them, and really they just needed me for part of it,
Yeah.
So it took a lot of years, to get that through my head. Since it was your own business, you just thought you had to do everything. So it was pretty tough to do that, but I can be major behind, and I just don't care. Now, if they don't want to wait, they can get somebody else.
Well, I think he cares. It's that you've developed this understanding that there's more to life than just working working and dying. As you think about like your loves and your work, your family, your faith, what are you looking forward to?
No, I want to see. Of course, my biggest thing to look forward to is I'd love to see my kids, all follow Christ, and not do what the hard knocks that I had to, and this day and time it seems super hard because there's so much information available to them that I never had for sure, that turns them away from this or that or whatever, and it created a life of anxiety that I never had, because I always knew. I've always believed in God, whether I had them few years there that I was doomed supposedly, but my biggest goal in life is to see that in all my kids, which is not there where I'd like to see it yet. My son, he still lives at home, so it's all good with him, but he's wanting to be Mr. Guitar Guy, and so I pray that he takes the right decision there, because that could be a whole different road. So you got to stand behind him there and lead him and guide him, hopefully.
Indeed. One of the things you've told me before we sat down here today was that in all your playing of a bass guitar, you've never played anything other than in a Christian band.
That is correct.
How'd you come to that decision?
Well, I never took any lessons. I bought a bass guitar when I got out of high school and bought some Southern gospel records, and sat in my bedroom and tried to figure them out, and then tried out for this gospel quartet. And actually, they felt sorry for me, I guess, and took me in, But I always said, I always prayed, if you help me, I will only play for you. So if I make a promise, I was raised to keep that promise,
Mm-hmm.
So I try to be a man of my word, whether it's to God or to you or anybody else. So I've never, now at home or something, sometimes me and my son's messing around, we might play something, but I've never played out anywhere except for Jesus.
What's your favorite song to play with your son?
Probably Tender Surrender by Steve Vai. It's just an instrumental song, that he worked a long time on to get it, because Steve Vai is pretty amazing guitar player. But anyway, we mainly just play, Christian stuff. He likes a lot of Hillsong stuff, like probably his favorite one now is a song called Lion that Brandon Lake does. So we play it a lot together, and then I had to get him into Pink Floyd a little bit. So we definitely play Comfortably Numb, things like that, Wish You Were Here and stuff like that at the house,
Those are some good guitar licks.
Yeah.
Where's your favorite place to go to take pictures of eagles?
My favorite place that I have been is 2 years ago. I went to the state of Washington because a friend of mine that likes taking them as much as I do, we found a guide up there that would take us on a river, Skagit River in Washington, and man, it was amazing because the scenery was beautiful and there was eagles everywhere. And in a week's time, we took each of us took probably 20,000 pictures, because we were out in the boat and this guy would slingshot fish out there, so they'd come dive for him just right in front of us, So
wow.
you had the best case of whatever, and but that was pretty amazing.
If people want to see some of the pictures that you've taken, where would they find them?
If there's an app called Flickr,
Yeah.
and it's a free app. You can just type in my name, and I've got probably 10,000 pictures on there. I don't know, way
Really?
too many. Yeah, way too many. If you're bored and want to go through them, it'll take you a day or two.
You've had some of them turned into some decent-sized art pieces, haven't you?
I did a show 2 or 3 years ago at the Nature Center here in town for the Missouri Conservation, and I had about 50 of them blown up for that, to put on a show out there. But they're still sitting in my closet from that show. I've gave a few away, but it's pretty much a hobby. I haven't done anything yet, but I probably should. I need to support that habit a little bit, or my wife says I do, because that kind of photography, the lenses and stuff are fairly pricey, for sure.
They are. One of the questions I've asked people all along the way is, do you have a word of advice that you could give us, something that you've really learned to live with and learned to live by, and that you'd like to share with us?
Probably my word of advice would be, I build my hope on nothing less than Jesus' blood and his righteousness. And that's probably it. That has saved me my whole life. Plain and simple. Because without him, man, there is nothing, And because he's there for everything, whether it's health, finances, companionship, eternity, whatever, And the sooner you realize that, life is good. Your anxiety is gone. So that's pretty much what I missed. That's pretty much what I got to say, and that's carried me through lots of ups and downs.
Roger, you're one cool guy.
I appreciate that.
And it's been a joy to sit here and listen to you talk and to hear some of your stories and to see your heart on display. You are, you do have a lot of joy in you. You've laughed a lot in this time together. I try to be harder than I am. It's what my wife says anyway. She said it's okay for people to see the soft side. And I said, no, it's not okay. But when you've lived that image your whole life, you just don't want nobody to know. That's the reason you never speak is because you always cry. Which is what I've always admired about you, Jason, because your tender heart. I thought, I know where that guy's coming from. Yeah. Well, one of the things you present like a grizzly bear, but you are like a teddy bear. And
I've heard that before.
Yeah, you're one of those people that everyone wants in their corner, because you've got the gift of encouragement.
Right.
You care, and you just speak truth, and there's no, you don't have to sugarcoat it because you just speak what you see, and that's beautiful.
It. Yeah, I tell it like it is.
You do. Thank you much, Roger, for coming in today.
Well, you're welcome. I appreciate it, Jason. Appreciate the invite.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, a big thank you to Roger for sharing his story. In listening to Roger today, I hope that you were inspired, encouraged, and challenged, and that you begin to behold and embrace and celebrate the really cool people that are around you. The Really Cool People podcast is produced by Schweitzer Church, Springfield, Missouri. Taylor Likes is our executive producer and editor, and I'm your host, Jason Leininger. You can help us by liking, reviewing, and sharing this podcast. Until next time, stay cool.